The Special Investigation Committee set up by President Julius Maada Bio to probe the August 10th protests in Freetown and other parts of the country on Thursday, 13th April 2023, released their findings and presented to President Bio. Now, the committee's findings were that though there were, incessant complaints of youth unemployment and marginalization, substance abuse, economic hardship, and food insecurity, these were not a justification for the level of violence perpetrated in the country. However, the findings also revealed that the demonstrations were politically motivated, well-planned, organized, and executed in a coordinated manner. So this morning, to look at the findings and recommendations, we have Femi Claudius Cole, leader and chair of Unity Party. We also have Victor Idrissa Lansana, vice chair, Human Rights Commission, Sierra Leone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
From a political party perspective, how has Unity Party digested the findings? And when you respond to that, piggyback as well on how the whole investigation committee was set up onto the point of the findings.
Wow, loaded. Let's start with the actual composition. I think that the composition of the committee itself was, maybe flawed is a strong word, but there were so many questions raised with regards to its composition. The committee consisted of, I believe there were 15 people, heads of various institutions, retired police, army, and the like. And some of those on the committee had already stated very clearly their position. And they had already drawn their conclusions. So one would have questioned their objectivity in their inclusion into that committee. Then I have read the report. I think I've done so twice. I did so again this morning to refresh myself. And the report in its entirety, I think they have done a gross injustice to monies spent and to time spent. The report, and even I was invited to that committee, and my experience on that day told me that there were preconceived ideas. And we were merely being invited to these committees to confirm their preconceived ideas and notions. They already had the script, and I guess we were supposed to simply write the accompanying music, which was not very successful, at least from my own part. And even after my visit with the committee, I did a Facebook Live where I actually said, the committee just wants to write the lyrics to the music set already by His Excellency. And looking at the report now in its completion, the report answers very few questions. It barely investigated. It made a lot of innuendos. It is full of falsehoods. And when I look at the composition of the committee, I am shocked that it could have been crammed with so many misleading and rabbit holes. The committee kept going down rabbit holes.
Let me take you quickly, Femi. I know we've had conversations when the committee was set up. We've had conversations about the composition, and those concerns are still there.
Yes.
But because of time, let's go to the specifics in the report. I mean, when you talk about falsehood, is it because Femi Claudius Cole is named as one of those who fanned the flame? You're referring to, you're accused of putting out a tweet accusing Maada Bio and his Mende boys. I mean, but the report is saying that.
Yes.
So let's allow you to speak to that. You're one of those.
And when the reason why I will go back to the composition is because there's somebody on that committee who's from the IMC. And I believe even the chair has a relationship with the IMC, the Independent Media Commission.
As the chairman of the Complaints Committee of the...
Exactly. And right there in Annex L, I believe it is the tweet supposedly from Femi Claudius Cole.
Right.
Now, if it is a committee set up to investigate, the committee must have the ability to fact check. Anything that should enter into that report should have been fact checked. That tweet, and I have a lot of people who follow me, and some of them are actually saying, Ms. Claudius Cole, we have all your tweets. That tweet was taken out, a portion of the tweet, and then it was doctored. And the moment it was done, on the 21st or 20th of August.
Do you want me, let me just go through the tweet quickly, Femi.
Please do.
You mentioned, well, you are accused of saying that please don't sit idly. Call your members of parliament, Congress representatives, senators, ICC and political leaders in the diaspora. Madabiu and his Mende boys are currently engaged in ethnic cleansing all over the Northwest. They are killing innocent opposition members. I mean, that's just an example.
That's and the extract that you have read was what was added to my tweet that was doctored.
Right.
And the moment it was done, I put out a disclaimer and I circled the portion and I said, do not put words in my mouth. These are not my words. And if you look closely at the tweet, if you go back to Twitter, you can see the tweet is still there.
Right.
And it does not contain those two last paragraphs.
So what you tweeted was death squads that carried out arbitrary executions during the curfew period were headed and controlled by few powerful men. They must also be placed on the most wanted list. The footage will prove their culpability. Is that what you tweeted?
That was my tweet.
Right.
And after my tweet, I always add, we don't gaze. And since that doctoring of my tweet, I now add no plus, no minus. I.e., not add anything bien, no minus anything bien my tweet.
Right.
So I put that out in the public domain. And many people received that to say what was added was false. And if you look closely at it, Samuel, you would see the font is different.
Right.
The size of the font is different and the font itself is different.
Right.
So my shock or my disappointment is that somebody within the IMC could not fact check. If you are claiming that you picked up a tweet in social media, and the report has a portion where it addresses media, false hate speech in the report, that is highlighted as one of the issues. So there is a report with 15 supposedly highly qualified individuals who could not fact check. You couldn't do fact checking. And that is not the only error. I would highlight that because that's the first one you approach.
Right.
Let us take a couple more that are in the report. There's one where they quote Ice-T, Councillor Sheku. And they actually say that leading up to the August 10, they failed to clarify that that statement was made in 2021. And it's related to a budgetary hearing that was done at council. And when they inserted it into their report, they did not put the context. And that is why I will always say this report has very little value. Because if it is loaded in untruths and falsehoods and misconceptions, because if you put the context that this man said this in 2021 in relation to a budgetary council hearing, you have put his words into context.
Continue to stay with us, Femi.
Let's go to the human
Victor.
rights perspective. From the Human Rights Commission, Victor, what are you deriving from the report?
And thank you very much again for having the Human Rights Commission of Sierra Leone. You know, these are very serious issues. You follow that the Human Rights Commission put out a press statement when this incident happened way back in August of last year. Our concerns have always been very constant. We are very much concerned about the loss of lives. The report has shown very clearly that 7 police officers lost their lives, 21 civilians also lost their lives. we are very concerned about the security situation, that actually led to the August 10 incident. Several other issues, youth unemployment that the report also brought out. Several other issues, socio-economic issues. So these are concerns, and we want to really pay attention on the content or the body of the report. That is what actually concerns us, because at the end of the day, we don't want such an ugly incident to occur again in this country. Because, we have said that we don't want to go to war anymore. We want to ensure that we dialogue. If there are issues, people really feel aggrieved about, come to the table and dialogue. Other than, taking the laws into your hands, other than, going all over the place to maim, to kill, and as the case may be. So we are very much concerned about the human rights issues that actually surround this report. We are not so much concerned about the procedural issues. Those ones are really for either the courts or the politicians or people who have been named. Again, we are concerned about, since the report came out, we have had 1 or 2 people who were named as persons of interest, who said they were not actually consulted, or who were not brought before the committee to make their points. So that is for us also another issue that we are concerned about, because there is a cardinal principle of law which is expressed in the Latin language as audi ultra partem, which tells you, or which means that you have to hear the other side. And that is very cardinal. It has to be really, really looked into, because this it's a printable document. It lasts forever. And so if your name is mentioned, or if you are a person of interest, you must be brought before the committee for you to be heard. So these are our concerns, and we are really, really very much, very serious about them. And we hope that government will be able to look at those concerns, and the recommendations that are really stated in those reports, are implemented. Because at the end of the day, we want to ensure that the security of this nation is really guaranteed. Government has the constitutional obligation. When you look at Section 5 of the Constitution, subsection 2, it's very clear that the welfare and security of the people of this country, of the state of this country, is in the hands of government. And for that, it places burden on the Sierra Leone police, on the military, on public servants, to ensure that the security of the country is guaranteed at all times.
When the incident occurred in August of 2022, you put out a statement like you've just mentioned. But was there any form of preliminary investigation to be able to position what the report is saying? Because now you're looking forward to the implementation of the recommendations in this report. But effective implementation of these recommendations should have been informed by a factual process. So did you do any preliminary investigation to have gotten a better idea or fair idea of what really happened as a commission?
Yeah, so, the Human Rights Commission of Sierra Leone is known for ensuring that they get the facts before they put out any, whether public statements, press releases, or a report. So every press release that you see we put out, we must give a brief background, stating the facts. So yes, that press statement actually talked about our preliminary investigations that we did. There is the draft report to that effect. And clearly, as a matter of fact, the chairperson of the commission during that period, or on the 10th of August, was actually in McKinney. We are having a public inquiry into the conduct of law enforcement officers. So the chairperson and her team were there. I was actually in Bo and my own team. We are looking at the police and other law enforcement officers. So they actually had to run for their lives. The whole where they were, where the investigations were going on, the public hearings were going on. People actually went to their place. They were almost, they were almost, if you like, ran into, so they had to really run to ensure that they were able to protect their lives. So we saw it. And during that period, they also did a kind of preliminary investigations. So we had real-time investigations to see what happened, particularly in McKinney. And that happened across the country because we have offices across, in the Northwest, for instance, in Poloko, we have an office there. They also did investigations. Here in Freetown, we have in the western area, there's also an office there. They also did a report. So also, of course, the HQ here in Freetown, we also did a preliminary investigation. So we have the real facts. Is it in line with
the reports that has been published by the committee set up by
President? Yeah, so, the committee's report is elaborate, if you like put it that way. But the fact that we actually alluded to in our report, are really, in concert with what they put out. For instance, there were loss of lives, there were destruction of property, there were unwanting behavior of Sierra Leoneans. Everybody saw. AYV also helped the country to see exactly what was happening. So those footages cannot be refuted at all. So we are concerned that government has to be very much serious in ensuring that those recommendations that are in that report are taken into consideration so that we can really, it's no longer a nip to the bud, but it's to ensure that we take steps to ensure that we address those issues.
Let's quickly move over to our studio 2 where we have Imran Sila, one of the communication strategists at the Ministry of Information and Communications. Imran, thank you for joining us this morning. And unfortunately, we are unable to get a representative from the committee, but definitely we'll bring a representative from the committee to, for that conversation. But Imran, let me ask this question. Femi claimed, for example, that the committee had a script already. Even before the formation of the committee or the setting up of the committee, words in the report were already pronounced by Imran, so other members of the government were on record for saying that particular incident was financed, organized, executed, well planned by politicians, opposition politicians precisely. And these are words that are captured in the report that has just been published. Is the allegation Femi is making, is there anything to go by that the government perhaps may have given a script to the committee?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and good morning. You would also want to add Peter Conte, who was the interim chairman and leader of the APC at the time, right? I'm sure his interviews, right, should be in your archives somewhere. Right. Should be in the archives of SLBC 98.1. Even on AYV, we had him here. Well, exactly. Right. And his sentiments were not removed in any way from what we saw happened, between the 8th to the 10th of August. So that is just one more to add to a long list of those of us who were on radio and TV quite clearly stating exactly what we saw unfolding. And again, we were told during that period that it was against cost of living. Right. And the economic situation and the economic hardship. That was what we were made to believe. But my argument has always been, Samuel, the cost of living that affects citizens of Bombali district is the same that affects inhabitants of Kailaon district. It's the same for those in Cambia. It's the same for those in Falaba and Calabar. 80% or 85% of this country was largely peaceful on that day, particularly on the 10th of August. So it was quite clearly in places where you would want to think referred to as opposition stronghold. That was where those dastardly acts unfolded on the 10th of August. So you were talking about Makeni, where interestingly enough, they are now on record and have gone down as being the first district to actually shoot, right, and kill a local unit commander in Makeni. It has to be Makeni for some reason. Or you'd want to talk about Potloko district. That's another opposition stronghold, or the eastern part of Freetown. So we quite clearly saw what unfolded on that day, and we have no reason to suggest otherwise. Quite clearly, right, what we said was confirmed and asserted to by the interim chairman, Peter Conte. And I think that's the basis. But then let us go back again to the composition, because I see somehow we're now talking about the composition of the committee. Some of those individuals in that committee did not ask to be there, just by the position that they hold in the institutions that they represent. They obviously had to be part of the committee. So you want to talk about Interreligious Council, Archbishop Edward T. Charles. It's because of his position. That's why he got involved. Edinia Michael Aswalo, because of her position. Ahmed Said Nazrela, because of her position, because of his position, rather. And so, that was the composition of the committee, yeah? And they had to go right across the country in areas where those acts of violence and lawlessness occurred on the 10th, but also in other areas, because you also want to take on board the views of those places that was largely peaceful on that day. Why didn't they go out? If it was about cost of living, what were their views? And they clearly said, right, in no uncertain terms, that yes, we understand that there are challenges to the economy, but that is not reason enough for us to be lawless, right, and reckless and try to overthrow a government. So when you see statements on social media and people talking about Madabio they go, don't where they go, people that don't begin they run, it's not about cost of living. One other thing, again, I'd like to talk about is...
But just before we get to talk about that, you said overthrow government. Was this an attempt to overthrow?
Those statements were all over social media. I'm surprised you didn't see them, but I'll bring them to you after the show if you'd probably like to see them for the very first time. It is all over social media. Social media was awash.
No, I'm asking from the government's perspective.
Yeah.
The social media content is one thing, but the government's perspective is the official statement we go by. So I'm asking again, in your submission, you mentioned, you know, it's not enough reason to want to overthrow. So was this an attempt to overthrow the government?
Well, quite clearly it was an attempt to overthrow, right? Because, I mean, it could have been nothing else. I mean, if you want to protest against cost of living and somehow you ended up having machetes and guns and knives, right? The first individual to be killed was a police officer in the east end of Freetown. That does not suggest it was about cost of living.
And that's part of the conclusion of the committee, that it was an attempt to overthrow?
Well, the committee quite clearly said it had nothing to do. I mean, they found those assertions about cost of living has been on dodgy grounds.
No, I'm still on the overthrow. Is that from the findings or is it on your assumption?
Well, look, I am going by what I saw on social media, what unfolded in front of my own eyes on that day. I was not at home, right, being told what was happening. I was out and about, and I'm sure this was one of the places I visited. I actually went as far as PZ and beyond, right, and we did see those machetes, we did see those guns, we
I'm
did see
asking
those
you
knives.
to be very clear,
The
because
point is,
an attempt to overthrow is a very grave crime. It's treason.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm very
Absolutely.
deliberate on, you know, getting to understand the source of that submission you made about an overthrow.
In the scheme of things, it was not about cost of living. It was not about the economic hardship. Because, like I have said, 85% of the country was largely peaceful. And what we did see, categorically, all of us, I'm sure if we followed it on that day and events leading up to the 10th of August, we did see people talking about the overthrow of a government, right? Those who were members of the APC, I mean, at the subnational level, clearly participating in that act, and they funded, brought people to Freetown primarily for the purpose of, well, they would call it demonstrations, but quite clearly, I mean, suggesting that they wanted to overthrow, and so police stations were burnt in the process, right?
So going
in
forward,
all of those areas.
So going forward, the people should expect that all those who, from findings of the investigations, are guilty of, you know, fueling or instigating, inciting the August 10 demonstration could be charged with treason, attempting to overthrow the government?
I don't know where your nexus is coming from. I am stating exactly.
It's coming from your submission about an attempt to overthrow. So it comes back to why I'm very particular about getting to understand that submission further. Because to say an attempt to overthrow is not just a minor statement. It carries grave legal implications as well. So again, it comes to that.
So you're not just only trying to understand, you're making inferences. And so I would be the best person to make those inferences. So spare me that moment. You can make the inferences if that's what your own conclusions are. It doesn't suggest
Imran, it was your statement. It was you who said an attempt to overthrow. These were not my words. These are your words.
Your inferences.
And I'm trying to understand the source of that statement you made. Did you make it as an individual, or is it based on the committee's feedback? Is it from the finding?
Can I just get back to my point?
And yes, just after you clarify where the source of that statement.
There's nothing to clarify. I have said categorically right, that I did see what unfolded on that day. I did see the events leading up to the 10th of August quite clearly. All of us, right, did see on social media, except if you're not part of social media, but we did see on social media people calling for the overthrow of the government.
So your
right?
statement
That was
is
quite
only
clearly
from
established.
social media, not the findings of the
It
committee?
was quite clearly established. We did see arrests were made. We did see police stations were burned down. We did see machetes. We did see knives. We did see guns. We know for a fact that police officers were killed in the process. So does it now suggest to you, if you're looking for inferences, does it now suggest to you that that was a protest against cost of living in an event wherein police stations were burnt, in an event wherein people carried knives, machetes and guns, in an event wherein police officers were killed? Does it suggest to you, if you're looking for inferences, does it suggest to you that that was a protest against cost of living?
My work is to get clarifications and information.
So we need to get the baseline and the basis right. That is all I'm asking for. So if I can transition very quickly to one more thing.
So quickly, just before you transition, so the statement, the source of that statement is content on social media, not the committee's finding.
If you want to fact-check the things I have said, you're more than welcome to do so. Did you see knives on that day? Did you see machetes on that day? Did you see guns on that day? Were police officers killed on that day? Were police stations burnt on that day? Right? You can go fact-check those. I'm more than happy to come back again at any given point after you have done that fact-checking for us to have a conversation around that.
Let me ask this question, Imran, quickly. You said the cost of living, hardship and all of that were not, but the committee is saying these were contributing factors. In fact, these were fertile grounds for the exploitation of politicians to have financed, executed, organized and well planned. So is that, are you not taking that into consideration?
So here's the point. Here's the point for me. Fertile grounds for politicians, yeah? And I think that explains, right, that's the caveat to what the question you've asked. And it is precisely because of that that I keep saying that 85% of the country was peaceful. So yes, there are challenges to the economy. There are cost of living issues, right? Sierra Leone is not the only country faced with economic challenges right across the world. Yesterday I was on CNN after AYV on Sunday, watching what is happening in the UK, what is happening in the US, and the challenges they are facing to their economy. I mean, we're going through hard and difficult times, right? But be that as it may, government has made several interventions. My point is, if it was right, a demonstration against cost of living, the whole country, right, every single part of the country would be part of that exercise. No, that did not happen quite clearly, and I'm sure that was stated in the report. One more thing.
I know. I have to ask you this question, Imran. You know, Femi talked about how they were called to appear before the committee to make comment, but the report also clearly stated that not everybody was cooperative. So you have, for example, the report named the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, who's responsible for internal security, who did not appear. I mean, and the report is saying that is suggesting otherwise. So if he was called to give an account of his activities on that day, and he did not show up with not even countenancing the committee, what is government making of that? And we've seen or heard nothing in terms of a statement from the government with regards to that particular decision. Was that not an affront to even the president?
So I'm aware that His Excellency the President has made very clear statements. On Thursday last week when he received the report, he did say that he notes the concerns raised by the report and the recommendations therein. I know for a fact that he has spent time going through the report page by page, word by word, sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. And that is obviously with a view to making sure that he understands the full context of every single issue or issues raised by the report. And I'm sure I cannot speak for and on behalf of the President in this instance, right? We're all appointed by him, and ultimately he gets to take decisions on each and every single one of us. And I know the President to be very firm and decisive, and ultimately, once he digests the full content of the
All
report, right, we will hear
Stay
back
there,
from him.
stay there with us.
Just very quickly, one more thing I would like to mention, and that has to do with comments made that were also included in the report.
Yeah.
And somehow we seem to be suggesting that because those comments were made 2 years ago, somehow we should have been categorical, or it bears no link to what happened on the 10th of August. Now, look, it is on record, and that's also on social media, just in case you might want to fact check again, that Yvonne Akisoya talked about Boa Bisie. That's on record, and that happened long before the 8th to the 10th of August. Samuel Kamara, too, is on record as talking about Boa Bisie, right? Those events might have happened 6, 8, 12 months or 2 years before the 10th of August, but did it play a part leading up to the 10th of August? And I think there's a crucial question that anyone would want to ask.
Stay there with us, Imran. But also, just before we hear from you, Femi and Victor, I would like to quickly put this out. You know, I'm getting a lot of WhatsApp messages with a flyer that AYV is sponsoring a presidential debate under our Sierra Leone Decides flagship program on the 22nd of April at the Buntimani. In fact, on the flyer it's conference, but so AYV will not do that. That flyer is not from AYV, and if you must know, AYV is part of the National Presidential Debate Committee that would be organizing these debates. Already we've organized national women's debates and youth debates. And when it's time for an announcement in terms of date for presidential debates, we would come to you. That flyer is not from us, please. It's fake. And carrying the photo of Dr. Samuel Kamara and Dr. Julius Madabiu. That flyer is not from AYV. Please just throw it away.
Femi, let's come back to you and the August 10. In leading up, Imran is saying some of those contents leading up to the August 10 incident have a role to play in probably the mindset of people and how everything panned down. As a leader of a political party yourself, do you see how some of your actions, inactions, words, whether on mainstream media, on social media, or people you just interact with, can contribute towards instability in the country?
As opposition parties and members of political parties, we also have an obligation in governance. We may not be in government, but we have an obligation in the governance of Sierra Leone. And our obligation is to call things by their proper names, call excesses of the government out, point out in areas where things are being done that are harming the population, not helping our lives.
But in the interest of public good, especially in a country where we have a lot of gullible people, where do you draw the line between calling the government out to maintain checks and balances and also creating that balance where you don't go about inciting the public?
No, and an accusation of incitement is not very difficult to prove. A statement of fact that is an idea or a concept that goes against what the government is saying is the opposition doing its job. I give you an example. I am a person of interest, and so is Adi Macaulay. And what Adi was stating...
So there's what you say, and there's how you say what you say.
I give you a classic example, if I can finish. When Adi was on your couch, and they were discussing the legality, the constitutionality of a protest. Should he not do that? As a lawyer, as a citizen of Sierra Leone, it is for not only Adi, but any one of us to read, understand, and comment on the constitutionality of what is about to be done.
Femi, are you conveniently and comfortably saying that the opposition, when I say the opposition now, it captures all the opposition parties. The opposition has not in any way played any part in inciting the public, in as much as it's still trying to put checks and balances in place for the government.
I want to redirect our focus, if you do not mind.
No, let's not redirect yet. Just respond to this and then we can redirect.
And what I'm about to say impacts the report. It impacts the report, because what you are saying now is somebody incited And that was what led to the August 10. Am I getting you wrong? So if we focus on the report and what the report fails to do, it then directs you to answer your question quite clearly. It is apparent, just for clarification, that Imran has not read it. Because in the report, that inference is made clearly that it was a coup attempt. It is made in the report. But let me take you to where Imran is stating, I don't even know what Imran is stating, but it says in the report, incessant complaints of youth unemployment, marginalization, economic hardship, food insecurities were not a justification for the level of violence. So they are acknowledging that these issues were a factor. But my issue more with this report is the falsehoods. Now, I take you also, I was mid-sentence when you transferred over to him. I gave you the instance of my Twitter that was wrong. I've given you the instance where the context of Ice-T's remarks are not, you're getting a report that will stand the test of time, as he says. So clarity is important. That statement was made in 2021 in a different, totally different context where it was appropriate.
Unfortunately, we need to round up. Unfortunately,
secondly, there are two more issues. I think you've given Imran, that didn't even know what was in the report, enough time, where you will now not shortchange me. I've been here on time. Therefore, let us look at two other issues. One, he's talking about the Interreligious Council, who was present. They are on the Interreligious Council. The Archbishop was on the committee. But we see under Yvonne Akisoya's name, they claim that they did prayer and fasting on behalf of Adebayo. You hosted that team that came here that declared a week of prayer and fasting for the country. They were on your couch. I can send you the video. How did the Archbishop sit on the committee, see a falsehood being inserted into the report, and said nothing? And then we go back again to even what was said with Adi. So the report is full stuffed with inaccuracies, and even their conclusions are faulty. And this report must stand the test of time.
And as we wrap up, Victor, what is the Human Rights Commission looking forward to for the August 10 situation? And the trend, again, we see going forward with even the disagreement over the committee itself. What is the Human Rights Commission?
It's interesting, but you don't have to be surprised when you deal with politicians, okay? So normally you see a cherry-picking thing being done. Okay, some part of the report will be accepted by a group, and some other parts will not be accepted.
It's a question of accuracy.
It's not a surprise to us at all. For us, the security of the state, actually, if the security is compromised, it affects all the enjoyment of rights generally. So whether it's about education, whether it's right to life, properties, privacy, everything. So we want to see where governments will ensure that Section 5 of the Constitution is respected by ensuring that the security of the state is intact as we go into the elections. Already there are other threats now, about April 27. People are saying they will come out, they will destroy, they will do this. So we are calling on the intelligence units of the Sierra Leone police to ensure that they do more. If you look at the report, it talks about clearly how there was a lack of security coordination, that these people were not actually up to task. Whether it's about resources, whether it's about going after intelligence, and so on and so forth. So all of these are very serious problems. And if the security of the state is compromised, it means that you cannot come to work. It means that you cannot go to school. It means that you cannot actually engage in your political rallies, in your political programs. So people have to understand, again, political parties have to understand that Section 35 of the Constitution places obligation on them to ensure that they shape the thinking of Sierra Leoneans and not to do things that will be untoward, that will threaten the security of the state. So we are calling on everybody, the government, opposition members, to be very much respectful to one another. But just one quick one, please, on the issue of, you talked about the deputy minister. When I started making my submissions, I talked about the cardinal principle of law that talks about hearing the other side. Mm-hmm. I have read a tweet or a Facebook commentary from the deputy minister saying that he was never actually contacted. He said he was called on the day when he was actually wanted to go and appear before the committee. So to us, I mean, it actually defeats the cardinal principle of hearing the other side. And we have to understand that...
Does that not validate Femi's claim?
That's what?
That the report is faulty?
No. So I've just said, I mean, it's a cherry-picking thing. Some part of the report will be accepted by some people.
Unfortunately, we do not have time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. Thank you.
This is what would end today's edition of Wake Up Sierra Leone. Our quote for today says, "Peace and justice are two sides of the same coin." And it comes from Dwight Eisenhower, who was an American military officer and statesman who served as the 34th President of the United States from 1953 to 1961.
Many thanks to our sponsor, Rokel Commercial Bank, for their support to the program. Until we meet again here tomorrow with more interesting topics, we have been your presenters. My name is Samuel Wise Bangura.
And I am Phoebe Nswil. Have a lovely day and a productive day.